Hello, my friends, and welcome to the most vicious debate in defense of NieR Automata the internet has ever seen. And today I'm joined by Pixel a Day. Say hi.
Hi. That was quite the intro. I feel like you've talked this up now and you've set the expectations.
I have.
Way
it's on
high.
Purpose. It's on purpose. Because...
We can only go down from here.
Okay, but here's the thing, Pixel. When you told me that this video was going to really tear into NieR, I was not expecting how much feelings I was going to have at the start. I was like, oh yeah, a disagreement about a video game I like. There's no way I'll respond emotionally to this. And for like the first 20 minutes, I was like, feelings and activation, shakiness was getting into my throat. And I was like,
to kill, rising.
I need to calm the F down and write my notes, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to have a conversation.
I'm sorry.
No, you're
I'm
not.
No, I am. I'm genuinely sorry that I triggered you. I feel like this. I want to get in front of this right now because people are definitely going to get
Please
into
do.
my comments and do this. People are absolutely 100% going to accuse me of just making this video to upset people and just going into this game because I wanted to hate it. And
I mean, those kind of comments come up whenever you dislike anything people likes.
Yeah, well, unless it's an indie game about lesbians, then you only liked it because you're a shill. But if you dislike a big popular game, then you're I don't know, a malicious or a fake malicious person. You're coming from some sort of place of being a hateful person who actually hates games.
Point is, all the gamers are hateful people. All the gamers are dumb, stupid, and hateful. But all the people who like games and don't associate their identity and core values with them, they're usually fine. They like games well enough.
Oh, I like how you put that. Well, you just pretty much said what I wanted to say. But I just want to clarify that I am not that type of person at all. Like, maybe we should blame the people who do actually go into things with that motivation and court the rage clicks and so on for having made the rest of us so cynical.
They're easy to spot usually. Because
I don't know.
They usually start their videos with, "What's up, gamers? This is the game that I hated the most this month. Let's talk about all the bullshit that this game has to offer. Come on, games journalists."
And it's their angry face on the thumbnail. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, you know the voice. Like, they're easy to find.
So I just want to clarify that couldn't be further from the truth. I wanted to like this game. I'm not exaggerating. All my feelings that I talk about in the video are my genuine feelings, and I'm not putting it on. And I don't want to upset anyone. Really, I'm a pretty conflict-averse person like anyone else. But
Pixel's a good person. She's talking to me, who is the most. She's talking to me, the most staunch NieR writer man on YouTube, which is a title of pride.
That you definitely just didn't come up with just now.
No, it's
the staunch writer man.
I have a little plaque, a little plastic made to look like glass plaque.
Cool. Maybe one day you could get Yoko Taro to sign it.
He'd probably draw a butt. Honestly, he'd draw a butt.
That would seem very in character.
Yeah.
You should ask him to draw a butt if and when you meet him. Yeah.
See, then if I do, he'll just write his name.
Oh, yeah. You never know with these auteurs, do you?
Yeah.
What they're gonna do.
All right, but no, it was clear that your honest feelings were there, and for my end, I definitely don't. I'm not going into this with the goal of changing your mind, because obviously that's not going to happen. You felt the way you felt. Games are art pieces. We have subjective feelings toward them, and those subjective feelings are often cached in objective regions. But humanity is complex. But what I do want to try to do is at least try to expose where nuance existed and where why people who are fans of it saw it as a deep work or an affecting work, by addressing your points and your frustrations with the game directly. Does that sound fair?
Yes, I would love that. That sounds very nice. I have a feeling this might just be you talking at length in a very lovely way about all the meanings you found, and me just responding with, I don't think that was in the game.
Maybe. But before we actually start with the game, though, let's get metatextual, because you brought up that recent Yoko Taro quote where he was saying, there's no deep meaning in my games at all, hand-wavy, get out of my face reporter response.
Yeah, let's get a bit meta.
So how familiar are you with Yoko Taro's history of dealing with interviewers?
I know that he doesn't do it a lot, and seemingly doesn't like to appear in public very much, and does seem to downplay his own work quite a bit.
Quite a lot.
Yeah, that's why I found a bunch of interviews where he was like, "My story sucks," and I was like, I almost put that in, but then I was like, no, that could just be Japanese modesty,
Yeah, it's a combination of modesty and Yoko Taro being an asshole.
A lovely combo.
Yeah, I mean, he puts on a character whenever he has to do an interview, and almost all of his interviews are entirely dishonest. Before he put on the Emil head, he was using a little felt puppet instead and not appearing on camera that way. And, he says a ton of things in order to say the opposite of what he actually feels or means. Like, he'll say things like, the reason I wear the mask is because I'm very ugly and I'm not popular with girls and no one will ever want to marry me. He's a happily married man.
Yes, I saw those.
And for me, because the way he does interviews is to be facetious on purpose to make fun of the interviewer, that my games my NieR Automata doesn't have much deep meaning is a response that he gives when reporters say things like, I saw the influence of my favorite philosopher Nietzsche in this game a lot. Can you talk about Nietzsche? And he'll be like, no, it's nothing. You're reading too much into it. And he gets that question all the time. He says he doesn't like doing interviews. He does interviews all the time. He is a contrast in terms of the character he puts on when he does public speaking, and so it's hard to say as an audience, but you kind of just get to the point where you respect that he is a weirdo, and he doesn't take the things he says publicly seriously.
Yeah, I definitely get the feeling that he presents himself as a kind of trickster character.
For sure.
In some interviews and so on.
He is the Loki of Japan.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how to feel about that. I guess what the end result of that is that he's sort of in the end a bit of a blank canvas where everybody projects the motivations and intentions that they think he has onto him, and then he doesn't have to really be genuine, and he doesn't have to answer to any of those. And
he also doesn't have to be disingenuous either. He gets off scot-free by riding the middle.
Well, yeah, I think he thinks he gets off scot-free, but I mean, I don't have a huge amount of respect for people who don't respect their audiences enough to be genuine with them and to be honest with their own intentions with their artistic work. I mean, presumably he had intentions, right? Like, no art is created without having some sort of intention or message that you want to communicate. And
him saying there's no meaning in my art is like Ubisoft saying there's no politics in my politics game.
I guess I took that quote at face value because maybe that's what I wanted to see in it. Just like maybe people who want to see a deep meaning and a genius in him see that in what he says or doesn't say. But also, I mean, I took it from an interview where it seemed to be a straight interview where he wasn't really pulling many of these silly tricks. So I thought that might have been close to the truth. But again, it's all just projection, isn't it? Because he won't be honest with us about what he really thinks or wants. Is that a positive or not? I guess that's up to everyone to decide.
I think the main difference with that interview and the other ones was that it was conducted during quarantine and it wasn't an in-person meeting. I believe it was an exchange of emails.
Yeah.
And so he couldn't put on his character fully. I mean, he treats interviews like marketing opportunities, not as interviews.
Yeah.
But in the past, to sort of explain his writing, because he is coming from a place of intention with his writing, he as we've decided to establish ourselves, is that he has said in the past, before he got into this character interview thing he does, that his writing style is, he starts with the idea or the concept he wants to get past or communicate, and then he writes the plot points basically just to fit that idea, whether or not it is a logical or coherent result of the thing he's connecting it to before. Like, we talk about NieR and NieR Automata as the result of the joke ending of the original Drakengard. From Yoko Taro's writing style, as he's described it, he came up with an idea he wanted to talk about in NieR, and then contrived the plot to conveniently turn it into the next setting for his story so that he could convey that idea. It's not like this is the logical result of what happened in that ending.
Yeah, I think that was that the GDC talk that he gave on the originally? Because I watched that one, yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess that's just to establish metatextually that he does have ideas he tries to convey and goes through them.
I love how you say metatextually. You need to say it without laughing while you're saying it.
I try.
It's impossible. I know.
But he is a metatext upon himself, and he chose that life.
Yeah, the way I understood that GDC talk was that, I mean, he was talking about a plot point. He was talking about a tragic event, and then working backwards to create a feeling of tragedy. So for me, that wasn't really about an intellectual theme he was thinking deeply into. That was just more of a emotional or character point that he was working backwards to create. So I think that's it was more of a feeling, really, that he takes at the end and then works backwards from. And maybe we could talk about the feelings in his work because they land. I certainly can see that he attempts to create feelings in his work, and do they land or don't they land? Yeah,
we'll get there. We'll get there. I'll make that the next point that I go to, but I'm going to try to sell you this idea on that Yoko Taro starts at a final idea and writes backwards a little bit more by referencing the original NieR Replicant and Gestalt. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I
Because it's
haven't
going to be
played them.
spoilery.
Oh, well, that's okay. I'm not going to play them.
Okay.
Some other people might.
I figured. But so here is the... So essentially when Yoko Taro gave interviews about what inspired the original NieR, he set out to make a game that was, one, easy to play so that new gamers could play through it without difficulty. Two, would deliver on a deep and fulfilling story without gating it behind difficulty. And three, was going to comment on or critique how violence is so inherent or assumed as the action of video games by creating a story that let you be extremely violent and then, critiques you for giving into that at all, for not having the choice to be something other than violent. And it's a little hard to prove without actually referencing stuff in the game, but the whole point of NieR Replicant and its twist is that it is revealing more over time how much more violent the protagonist is becoming and how much stronger and oppressive the protagonist is toward all the other enemies of the game, sort of to try to get you to the point where at the end you make a choice of giving up that power or violence because you've supposedly learned the error of your ways.
I'm gonna have to take your word for that, and I 100% trust you. That okay, I haven't played the original, so
Right.
I believe you that that's what it's about.
Yeah, but you did see the remnants of that decision in NieR Automata when you reached the end, when you made the choice to give up your save to help other people finish the end. And that is a slightly recontextualized version of the same gimmick that was used in the original NieR, only instead of giving up your power, you are giving up something you feel has real-world tangible value in order to help someone else find meaning, and in that you find meaning.
Yeah, see, I saw that as a neat gimmick, and it was a warm moment. It made me feel warm, fuzzy feelings. I really liked that moment in the game.
I want you to try to hold on to that moment, because that one moment working, even when you disliked everything that led up to how it prepared you for that moment, think about how much that affects someone who liked and engaged with all of those things you hated, and then hit that moment, how much more of a peak emotional high that would be.
I wish I was one of those people that hit that emotional high.
That's fine, but
for me it was just a neat moment, and it is a neat moment.
Right. And it was logically there for you, even though the story didn't deliver the full experience that it was hoping to give you.
As a standalone moment, as a little gimmick, I thought it was cool. Generally speaking, anything that a game does to connect players in a positive way, I'm very down for.
Cool.
Yeah.
Common ground. That's what I got to establish there. That was my ultimate goal.
But you cheated because you watched my video, so you know the moments that I
cheated.
liked.
Yeah, and so I'm leading the compliment sandwich, and then I'm hoping that at somewhere in the middle we can at least get a little bit of hot sauce on the turd, and you'll enjoy the hot sauce. That's all. That's my only goal here. So let's move on to the writing and the feelings. and and the characters. So I would say, like, for about the first 20 minutes or so, you were really going hard in on the writing being bad and the feelings being over the top. And what I gathered from it was that your overall point was that writing should be nuanced and that characters shouldn't just state their motivations or feelings, because that doesn't deliver on nuance. It just is ham-fisted. Is that a fair summary?
I think, I mean, you have to take every different thing as it comes. I mean, I can really only speak to my emotional reactions to this game. I'm not going to make generalized statements, but yes, it made me feel that the characters were just cardboard cutouts, and I had absolutely no connection to them whatsoever, and because of that, I didn't connect with the story or anything that that happens in the story, especially with a story that deals with nuanced themes.
Sure.
Like, does this being have consciousness or not?
Right.
Does it have its own internal world or not? I
actually am going to touch on that later on.
Okay. But anyway, my argument is that, yes, to portray a nuanced idea, and a nuanced set of feelings like that, you have to have nuance in your writing. You can't just have someone say, I don't know. I am feeling a lot of feelings right now.
Have you watched Futurama?
Yeah, hell yeah. I love Futurama.
Have you seen the robot devil scream at Fry? You can't just have your characters announce how they feel. That makes me angry.
Yes, I'm that guy. That's me.
So I actually, like you, used Ex Machina, a movie that I saw and liked, as a foil for your analysis. I'm going to use that episode of Futurama as a foil for your critique of the nuance of NieR Automata. So
please.
That's probably my favorite episode of Futurama, because the entire episode, metatextually, is actually about what is and is not good writing. Because the characters are constantly announcing how they feel about things throughout the arc of that episode. And the full arc for Fry and Leela is that Fry is blatantly announcing to Leela, I love you, in all of these different ways. And Leela is like, I am not impressed because it's not impressive enough for me. And so he goes off, becomes this big holophoner player with robot hands, deal with the devil, and makes this amazing, beautiful play that finally conveys all of that feeling to Leela in a extreme and nuanced way, though the actual play isn't too nuanced, which can't even reach Leela because she's deaf. And the end of that arc is that he loses his hands, she gets her regular ears back, and he plays the art that says I love you for Leela again, only poorly, like all of his other attempts. And so ultimately him just stating his feelings was the thing that actually reached her. And they have to go through that whole rigmarole to establish that. And they do a lot of other things to talk about nuance and writing throughout it. Namely that the robot devil is constantly misunderstanding how to use the word irony, is constantly getting corrected by Bender, and then when the robot devil finally uses the word irony correctly at the big climax of the story, it is also the exact same moment at which the characters in the story recognize the dramatic irony that the audience could see building up watching the robot devil make his malicious plan throughout the episode. So it's messing with all of these different concepts of how writing has to be good, to be nuanced, while also committing the faux pas and saying, no, you can just say how you feel and it's still okay.
You should make a video about this.
I'm going to pause to give you a response to give you a chance to respond to that essay.
I'd like to respond by saying I'd like to see that essay in video format on your YouTube channel.
I will never do it.
Come on, make it a Patreon goal.
No, I don't have Patreon anymore either.
Well, make a Patreon and then make it a goal. I don't know.
So, I will say that I completely agree with your analysis that the main story, the forefront of the story as it's presented in linear fashion, is not nuanced. It is heavy-fisted. It is ham-fisted. I completely agree on those points. I think there are 2 points that make me okay with that. One is a cultural difference, and the other is that nuance is located outside of those moments that call your attention the most. When your attention is the most off of the action is where most of the nuance is delivered. The first being in Japanese televised productions, video games, anime, even dramas. These sort of very blunt, over-the-top, scream-at-your-face my emotions depictions are very common. They're very much the norm.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Often the reason given for this, at least from an American's perspective, is that it is because Japanese society is, very high context, lots of social rules and obligations that you have to fulfill at all times, and expressing yourself extremely loudly and vividly all the time is never something you have an opportunity to do in society. And so they gravitate to stories that offer that release, that let you see that full expression of emotion, because your whole life is a careful, nuanced communication with everybody around you. And in the West, in American writing, and those of us who are unfortunately descended from the history of atrocity of Great Britain, we have a society where we express ourselves bluntly and in your face and loudly all the time. And so in our writing, we value nuance and subtlety a lot, because it is the opposite of how we live our lives.
Do you watch anime?
I watch a lot of anime. Not as much anymore.
Why not?
Because I don't have time. And I got tired of looking for shows that I would like as opposed to shows I don't.
Right. So, I have a weird backstory now that I can't go into with anime, but I have a history with anime.
I am conceding that point, by the way. You are a busy adult person who doesn't have time for this shit.
And I'm
conceding that point.
I totally concede the point too that, and I mentioned it in the video, that anime has a very different style of storytelling, and this game is clearly inspired by it, that tradition of yell your feelings storytelling. And I'm confused about what to say now, because I was a huge anime fan for about 10 years. Basically,
that's about the time
from when
you can survive as an anime fan.
Well, it's interesting that you say you used to watch a lot more of it, because I also used to watch a lot more of it. My teens and early adulthood was the prime anime time for me. I was obsessed. I was a total massive anime fan.
Which means we were doing it at exactly the same time.
Yeah, and I've heard other people kind of say this as well, that they loved anime in their teens and early adulthood and then just kind of petered out. And I don't want to use the phrase grew out of it, but to some extent I do think that describes my and some others' experience of it too. And so
I completely agree with it. I mean, it's very much focused on that audience.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
Even its genres,
even
its genres are named for the audience that it's targeting.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think even in Japan, a lot of anime is made for teens. And so I kind of hesitate to... I know it is a cultural difference because we just don't have anything akin to anime in the way that it's developed in Japan.
Right.
We don't have anything like that in Australia or America or whatever. It's its own thing. But also I don't think anime represents storytelling in Japanese culture because it is so targeted to young people, and therefore I think even Japanese people would admit that the storytelling in anime is very, often very immature. Yeah, over the top for kids or young people.
And I agree with that analysis as well. I mean, I did my major in Asian cultural studies way back when, and
please tell me you wrote essays on anime.
No, I had one class that was about anime in which I wrote essays on anime, but when I wasn't specifically writing about anime or games, it was nowhere near my writing. Mainly because there were more interesting things to talk about.
Maybe you'll circle back to it. But
no, I will say, to lend more nuance to that analysis.
No, we don't want more nuance. We hate nuance. We need to yell what we feel. I mean, we need to do both, Pixel. We need to yell what we feel and then add nuance after the fact, which is what NieR Automata did. Anyway, when adults, there are still a huge portion of adults of every age range that are still into anime in Japan. And largely that's because when you leave that period of your life, when you leave high school, middle school era of your life, the culture of what your life becomes drastically changes in Japan. It becomes your office job, and you stay at that same job probably for the rest of your life, stay in that same office for pretty much your entire life. And so freedom and expression and the ability to explore yourself are, for many people, seen as over when you leave high school. And so that's why so much media still gravitates to that time in your life, even for adults of older ages, because it's often the last time that people got to live out their true selves before being bound by the, burdens of society. Yeah.
And there are, shows that don't focus on that experience, and those are the shows I gravitate to now. But I'm just adding that in to say there's a reason.
Yeah, insofar as I watch anime now, I look for stuff that's very kind of for adults, and
right. But there is a reason why adults who aren't in that target demographic in Japan, and honestly make up the largest portion of the money spending people who support the industry in Japan, are still interested in those narratives and that age demographic for shows that is supported by their cultural experience. That's all I wanted to add in there.
Yes, but that doesn't explain why people that love NieR Automata that are over 30 that aren't in Japan love it. Because, I mean, okay, you may be right about Japanese psychology and all of that. And that's a really interesting analysis. I won't argue with it. It sounds plausible. But what you're saying,
plausible is all I aim for.
That makes me feel sad, because it sounds like you're saying that people are clinging to childish things because they feel they've lost their childhood. And I won't say that's invalid, but I'm also allowed to look at these shows and games and say, look, that's childish, and maybe it's aimed for kids, but I don't know to what extent NieR Automata is kind of aimed at the young
really
people demographic, but it it seems to have a serious story.
Tropes.
Yeah, right. And I think those tropes are common, but I also at this point in my life I find them tiresome and childish, and I wish that anime and the games industry would grow up in many ways.
Right.
But that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. I would say then that chances are, because of the affect you have towards scenes like that it became harder for you to see or recognize when more nuanced conversations were happening for character building and things like that outside of the main story beats. Just to name a few, let's talk about the relationship between the main characters 2B and 9S with their operators that were delivered in the pop-in dialogue that happened when being assigned a new mission or when just running around the open world and doing side quests, and also a little bit in the emails in your inbox when you go off to read those. I would say that very nuanced and complex relationships were developed in those moments. Maybe not, spending a lot of time with a lot of dialogue to do it. I think when Yoko Taro delivers nuance in the game specifically, he does it in here's 1 or 2 sentences that are the keys to the dynamic, and then we're going to move on, because as a high context society, I expect you to be able to read the full meaning of the one sentence that gets said without it being further explained.
Okay, example?
Well, my main example is that when you went into the supplemental material, which, to expose myself, I don't read any of the supplemental material, and all of the meaning I get is drawn entirely from what I saw in the games.
Yep.
Because I don't like the supplemental material. I think it's silly. I think he should stop, but he won't, and so that's just fine.
Well, that's something you can ask him when you ask him to sign your glass
I won't
statue.
even bother. I won't even bother. I won't even bother. I know that man. He's not going to give me a straight answer. But he...
Yep.
So, in the ending of Route A, when 2B is killing 9S, one line is, why does it always end like this? Which is, with that and only her protest at the very beginning of the start of the game, when you are on the bridge about to do the black box explosion, is to be communicating that she is very tired of this mission of hers to keep killing anyone who gets too much information about Project Yorha. And there are a few other small asides, like when 9S says something that could be related to why he keeps having gaps in memory or keeps having to reboot to a past version of himself, and 2B just responds with, that very breathy anime emotional noise that they do.
Another lovely trope.
It is a trope, but it's contextual emotion through the lack of speech, which is very common in Japanese society. If I'm not saying something in response to what you want a response to, then you should already know that the answer is no. You shouldn't make me say no to you, because you should already get that I've said no without saying no. Things like that. High context society.
Yeah, there were these moments in the game when I got that I didn't have the full picture and that there was something more going on, but I think it just comes down to the fact that it didn't hit me in the feels. Some people took those little moments and they really dived deep in there, and they got a lot out of them. And for me, I noticed them, and I noticed, okay, Yoko Taro is probably trying to communicate some emotion. Something more is going on there underneath what's being shown, but I'm not sure what that is. And in some cases, you can't possibly know what that is until you've either like reached a point in the story 20 hours in when it's actually revealed what's going on, or read the supplemental material online, read the short stories or novellas or whatever.
That is a perfect segue to the next part, because I would say, for one, I think the contextualizing earlier events with later story reveals perfectly fine. That I think that's actually a rather good thing to do with writing. But in terms of some things that you said were not present within the game, could only be understood from supplemental materials, that's actually a point that I commonly see brought up by NieR fans and defenders, which I completely disagree with, because I think it's actually entirely present within the game and that you don't need the supplemental materials to get it. So the way I'm going to illustrate this point is with your point that A2's backstory and motivation were entirely not present within the game. And I'm going to push back on you.
Okay.
Because did you read Anemone's field report in the terminal next to her in the game?
Oh shit, I don't know. I don't know what I read and what I didn't read anymore.
Because that field report of Anemone's backstory, the android that leads the resistance camp, has A2 in it, and exposes A2's motivations and how she ended up being abandoned by Command and becoming a rogue android.
And where was this?
It's
where
not
was this
the same one that's in the supplemental material. It's a different story.
Yeah. Where is
it?
I clearly didn't find it.
It's literally just in the resistance camp, in a terminal, in a little computer thing next to Anemone, that another android is standing in front of for most of the game.
Oh my god.
But as you progress and you do a couple side quests, you get access to that terminal.
I see. The hidden terminal that
there are hidden text files in every aspect of the game. Like the emails are very important for communicating like relationships. But Anemone A2's backstory is in the game. It's just not in the main story. It's not shown to you until you go and find it and read it and then go, whoa, that's A2's backstory and motivation.
Yeah, well, that's a risk.
And the other, it's a
that's
risk.
The risk
it
that
is.
you take,
I like that
isn't
risk.
It? Yeah, totally. I don't like the risk. Which is
yeah,
funny because
you shouldn't have. You missed it. That's unfair.
The thing is, I love games that kind of let go of the reins and let the player free to either find or miss whatever. I mean, I really actually usually don't like games that hold your hand.
Yeah, Dark Souls did it better because there was only lore to discover as opposed to what Yoko Taro did with NieR, which was give you an obvious surface level story that could easily convince a player there's nothing more to see here, and then you don't go looking for it. But then if you go looking for it, whoa, there it is.
Yeah, and I think the difference is pretty much
he misled you on purpose. He misled you on purpose. Okay. And it wasn't cool, but I thought it was cool.
Well, yeah, see that, I mean, I'll just repeat what I said in the video because, like comparing it to Dark Souls is a complete game in and of itself, even if you never find the additional lore. The additional lore is like, it's gravy. I'm happy with the meat, like if I just have the meat, I don't need the gravy. But if you only have gravy and you don't have the meat, well, that's not gonna cut it. And,
as a Midwesterner who eats biscuits and gravy with no meat, No, the gravy is the good
weird.
part.
I don't want to.
The gravy is the good part. You put it on a biscuit so you can eat
stuff.
the gravy. Biscuits and gravy. That's my meal. That's my meal.
Okay, we could substitute meat for biscuits. Let's say.
Bread is just a vector for sauce. It's like noodles.
The thing is that Dark Souls lore is not necessary for you to enjoy Dark Souls.
Yeah.
But see, that
It's
little
unnecessary.
snippet that you said was hidden was necessary for me to understand the character of A2. And
Yeah.
so
Why didn't you find
that's
it?
the thing. That's the thing.
That's
like,
the response from the NieR fan.
yes,
is that
and,
you should have invested more.
well, you know,
And it's not fair. You don't have to. You don't have to invest more, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Oh no, it is there. Clearly, it is there.
Yeah.
But
And within the text of the game.
Oh, of course. But it's
Yeah.
very well hidden, and I still. Well, it's certainly a decision, and we can talk about why. If it's a.
Not one you have to like.
Yeah, I personally don't vibe well with the decision of hiding something that is really integral for you to enjoy the game as it is, in
Right.
some dark little corner where people are going to have an unsatisfactory experience if they don't look in that specific corner. And
The other half of A2's motivation, which is also kind of hard to miss because it is a single line contextual, like, you should hear this, is that 2B's memories were were transferred to A2 during that getting killed scene.
Yeah.
And so the other half of the A2's motivation is that she has 2B's memories and motivations and is dealing with the conflict and is dealing with being two people at once. And that is why she is being so driven towards 9S. It's because she is also fulfilling 2B's motivations subconsciously. And that is represented with the one line that says the memories were being transferred through the sword for whatever reason. And when A2 cuts her hair short to look like 2B. That wasn't just a gotcha for marketing before the game came out. It is representative of now this is A2 and 2B.
did you get that?
Very small things.
When you played the game, be honest, did you get that now, like when that transfer was done, which is technically 2B is putting her memories into her sword, not into A2. So
The sword transfers to A2. It's weird.
But this is the thing. Did you get that the sword is now A2 and the memories of that sword are now A2? Because I thought it was just she had the memories, but she was still her own person. Was it clear to you that she is now 2B?
You're going to hate me because it was clear,
I hate
but
you.
it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear until later on when I saw the reconstruction of 2B and her memories upon the ending sequence in which A2 commits a sacrifice to get to that point. And so it's like, yeah, I saw it. It took me a few dozen more hours, but I did see it. I was confused at it when it was introduced. When it got recontextualized later, that's when I realized, 2B never actually died. She's a robot. She's her memories. She's in the multiple bodies, just like the checkpoint saving mechanic through game mechanics delivers the idea that bodies are not what defines the presence of the characters, and that you reset to a different body with all of your memories or with some of your memories intact, and then have to go recover that body if you want your chips back. But there was a metaphorical textual reason for that regressive game mechanic that you didn't like and found inconvenient. That was, I will admit, inconvenient. and something that you could lose significant progress on. And so I'm not going to say that your experience with that mechanic, like your reasoning for saying the mechanic is bad, is wrong, because that's exactly the problem with that game mechanic. But it had narrative significance, and you hate me more for saying that.
I respect you and hate you more at the same time. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
No.
There's a German word for it somewhere.
Oh, yes. Maybe someone will let us know what the
Please,
the
in
German
the comments
word is
below,
that definitely
write
exists.
comments in German that I have to translate by putting it into Google Translate, but then it's only a one-line hint that leads me to a specific Russian film that references a German philosopher that will then recontextualize your comment.
So I concede utterly that you are right, and that you had obviously had the right interpretation, and I'm not even saying that interpretation isn't there, or that story isn't there. My position remains that it was not well told, and because I didn't get it, and I have a PhD, and I didn't get that was happening, and so maybe I'd be interested to hear, like, whoever hears this, what the split is of, like, the people who understood the sequence of events that we just talked about, and the people who play through the game and were just like, you know,
well,
like,
I am a lunatic who introduced himself to Yoko Taro's games by playing NieR Replicant in Japanese on my PlayStation 3, which I got from a bargain bin at a what was essentially a corner Blockbuster in my stay in Japan. And I went through that entire game not being able to read anything and having no knowledge of Drakengard or any of the things surrounding that game. I went through it completely without text.
you deserve
In a
that signed
story
Yoko
about
Taro
language. Like, I am a lunatic when it comes to being able to read Taro-isms.
And okay,
in his games.
that's really interesting. I wonder how much of that previous context that you had helped you to guide you to the meanings of this game, because my experience was that
definitely.
There you go. So I had never played anything by Yoko Taro before, so my experience is purely a newbie playing this game, which, by the way, Yoko Taro has explicitly said he designed it. I mean, did he mean it when he said it? I don't know. He said that he wanted it to be accessible to newcomers, even who haven't played NieR or his previous games. So anyway, maybe.
Hence the autoplay feature.
Maybe I
automate all the parts of the gameplay you're not used to yet, until you realize while watching it, oh, I could do it better, and then start taking over the different parts of the gameplay that you think you can do better.
I definitely couldn't do it better. The computer did it so well.
It created a tool set by which to help people learn the literacy of the game, and I thought that was awesome.
I had the exact opposite experience, but anyway, I maybe what we are seeing here in terms of difference is simply someone who is well versed in Yoko Taro's stuff versus someone who played NieR Automata for the first time without having played anything before.
And I have to say, it is unfair to talk to me, because with a background in philosophy, I am also unfairly situated to read the commentaries and the critiques happening in that game through the actual lenses of the philosophers being depicted.
Well, that's okay. I have a PhD in psychology, so I'm uniquely positioned to do an analysis of the psychological and emotional subtext.
It works. It works. So speaking of your PhD, I want to, because this was a big point of frustration for you in your analysis, which I think marked a real turning point from your lack of emotional affect for the characters to more critiqued, more nuanced critique of the writing and structure of the game and the narrative as a whole, which was when you called out the Kierkegaard section in The Abandoned Factory for its failure to really tackle religion as a subject in a fair or encompassing way.
Yeah. That's the bit. It's all in the video.
Right. So what if I were to tell you that that section was not a critique of religion, but only a critique of Kierkegaard?
Well, you'd have to explain.
All right. So I'm going to bring up a Google Doc of something that I have written for a previous video. No, not a previous, a subsequent video. A video that will happen in the future, maybe. Because there are a bunch of philosophers that didn't get very much time or much representation, but are stated in the game as being present. And I couldn't make whole videos on each of them, but I think in analyzing what was there, I've created kind of a coherent order of themes that interlock. But specifically with Kierkegaard's section, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the part of Kierkegaard's philosophy that's being commented on here. So Kierkegaard extols the religious life as being a kind of Hegelian synthesis of two lesser forms of, living or values. And he says that there is an aesthetic life where you essentially are more obsessed with escapist fantasies. You fail to recognize the communal nature, the interconnected nature of life and being a human, and art and social responsibilities. And while that can create very good art, it is characterized by injecting your own rewrites or edits or feelings into a work in order to get your own entertainment out of it, as opposed to accepting works of art or communication for what they are, for what the art is trying to communicate. And then there's the ethical life, which abandons the valuing of arts and communications to a certain degree, as it accepts social responsibilities and practical, pragmatic norms in society. And then a religious life, is a combination of recognizing the practical and real from an ethical life, and then also combining it with the ability to imagine potential and see possibility in the aesthetic life. And in order to reach that religious life, you essentially have a crisis of meaning, which can only be solved by a leap of faith to become specifically a Christian person. He didn't think other religions counted.
Oh, they don't. No.
And so I get to that point to say that little bit, just the leap of faith to overcome what is retroactively called an existentialist philosophy by later writers, is depicted in the Kierkegaard section as you're leaving the factory, because the machine zealots are literally jumping. It's nuanced, it's subtle, but it's also still heavy-handed. They're literally doing a leap of faith into the lava pits in order to transcend and enter a religious life. And I know your critique is religion is about so much more than that, and I agree. I'm a theist myself, and I think theists get a bad rap, especially in a lot of intellectual circles. But Kierkegaard himself sort of failed to recognize that the synthesis of his two ideas could result in not the good parts of both kinds of life coming together, but only the bad parts of both kind of life coming together and establishing themselves. And the critique of Kierkegaard as a person was that he once, when he was writing under the pseudonym Johannes Climacus, was that he described his own philosophy of religion as a self-preoccupation that was given universal importance by God. In other words, he saw his own philosophy as like something that was revelation upon him by God to give to other people to fix them. And so it's like Kierkegaard, the person, definitely had a personality that was taking some of the not great things people can take from religious values and principles and putting them on other people. He was like, if he had been more successful, he probably could have made a cult. And so it's like, I don't think it was a comment on religion, but a comment specifically on Kierkegaard, which is the robot that is turned off, that is dead at the start of the sequence. That was a big exegesis.
I liked it.
And your prediction about me saying eloquent things and you going, I didn't get that, has come true.
It's all come full circle.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can't engage in this discussion because I don't know much about Kierkegaard, as I don't have a deep knowledge of his philosophies. Right. So I'll have to take your word for it again. You're the Yoko Taro expert.
I'm not a Yoko Taro expert, but I happen to be... I'm very versed in his isms and the philosophers he decided to comment on. At least a lot of them, not all of them. I just had thunder. I might have a power outage. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
God doesn't like what we're saying about...
No, yeah, he got upset. He was like, Kierkegaard is my boy. He was Jesus 2.0. Why are you critiquing him?
Shut up.
But and I would say, like, with a lot of the different bosses that were given a philosopher's name, like, a lot of his writing was small critiques on specifically the ideas that those philosophers were putting forth, and not on broader concepts of, say, like, religion as a whole, which I think he didn't actually comment on. I think the commentary was entirely just on Kierkegaard. So essentially I'm saying your critique of how that sequence played out, if it were a commentary on just religion, is entirely fair. And honestly, I sympathize with that because I do think that most people are going to take that as a commentary on religion and not on Kierkegaard, even though if you go into the file, you'll see that Kierkegaard is the leader of that group, and it is trying to motivate you, hey, go learn some Kierkegaard and then come back to me. Like, tangential learning motivation happening in the game. But I agree with you that most people are going to see that in the most, like, reductive way. And I don't like that aspect, but I also recognize that enough is there to tell people to go and educate themselves about a specific person's idea.
I hope that that's true. I hope the game leads to people being more educated. Insofar as that's your interpretation, it's lovely. And, once again, hidden in a very, very tiny dark corner. Again, that maybe you had the special... specialist knowledge to go in and extract that interpretation. I clearly didn't.
That's why I'm making all of these YouTube videos, because I'm like no one is
No
talking
one
about
gets
it. They just keep saying Nietzsche. Nietzsche was one dude in the game who poured oil on his dead brother. He was nothing. It's not about Nietzsche.
Everything's about Nietzsche. It all comes back to him. He was the only philosopher, don't you know?
Here's the secret that no one wants you to know. The original NieR Replicant was far more critique of Nietzsche than NieR Automata was. Nietzsche's philosophy is critiqued and present in Replicant. Not in Automata, because he already did that. He's moved on.
I love hearing you talk about the game. It definitely makes it seem like a good game. And
I can hear the undertone, the subtlety of, but it's not in your voice.
I think we're having the same thing again, where you're a specialist on Yoko Taro's games, and so you had the specialist knowledge to extract the a nuanced interpretation, and people who don't have that specialist knowledge will not extract that.
It's not just his games, but the external factors of also having spent a lot of time researching different philosophical ideas.
Do you know what? Instead of talking about butts and how much he likes butts, and this is just an idea, he could say that the game has some critiques of Kierkegaard, and that might actually lead people to find the meaning and the messages in his game, if that is indeed the meaning and the message he wants to convey. Just a thought.
So that's a perfect transition.
It sounds like I'm being salty about the fact that I didn't find meanings that were there, and I am a bit salty about that. And what can I do? I'll take that. I'll take it on the chin.
But that is actually a perfect transition to talk about the butts.
Let's talk about the butts.
The butts, I'm going to make you so mad right now.
You're not going to defend
the sexuality.
The butts. Please don't defend the
sexuality has narrative, metaphorical meaning.
Okay, go for it. Shoot.
So, first off, metatextually, the reason 2B has a big exposed butt is because Yoko Taro said, I like big butts, and wanted to put one in the game that I could look at. Yes, he couldn't lie, and he said, I'm gonna put a big butt in the game that we can look at. And, however, to sort of, as my first foray into, but it has a metaphorical significance, when you actively attempt to look at 2B's butt, she takes agency away from the player and swats the camera away. You knew about this, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay, that's actually important. You're gonna hate me for saying that that's important, but it's important.
I could never hate you. I could never
hate
you.
Yes, you could. Not yet. Give me time. Give me time. I'll get you there. But all right, so sexuality and violence are used as metaphors to connect all of the different kinds of life form in the game together so that they are represented as equal, that they are being shown as non-distinct, despite the game constantly yelling that all of these different groups are different and that none of them have meaning or matter. They are being connected through metaphors of sex and violence. And this is one of my videos, but the very first remember that era of YouTube where every time someone said butt, they would just put a butt on screen?
You should do that for this.
I'm not. I'm glad we've moved past that. But the very first creature or thing that you can kill in the game is a flock of birds that flies by during the intro sequence before the bridge. You can shoot your pod bullets at it and the birds will die. That's the very first animal you can kill. And anytime you see birds in the game, the same thing can happen if you shoot at them. The androids are presenting themselves as being wholly different than the machines, entirely separate. But when you get into the desert and you see the machine orgy, what they end up birthing are androids. Machines that look exactly like androids. Later on, in the amusement park, when you defeat the tank and you get the first machine core that drops in the game narratively, it describes the machine cores as being similar in structure to a plant cell, which, if you go into some of the records, the data in the pause menu, the black box of your high units is also described as having a plant cell structure, which is a foreshadow to when it is revealed that black boxes, which are the core of the androids, are made from the cores of machines. Which now, if you followed, we have connected that android life and machine life and plant life are all co-equal existences. And then there is a side quest with the machine shepherd in the forest kingdom, who then leads you to go and kill a bunch of rampaging moose that is led by a machine which believes itself to be a moose, thus connecting the machines to animal life. And of course, the Yorha motto, glory to mankind, we are made in the image of our creators, the heavily biblical metaphors connect the androids to be co-equal in their mental life and their valued existence with humanity. And so all of these various depictions of violence and sex are connecting that a human life, an android life, a machine life, a plant life, and an animal life are all of equal value in existence. And this is culminated at the end of Route A, when, in that terrible mounted position that 2B uses to to strangle 9S, it is, in terms of its motion, sexualized, but she is crying because she is committing an act of violence, and the result is that 9S is reborn as a machine. It is essentially just doing multiple uses of violence and sex as metaphor to say they are all co-equal. They are morally equal in their value. Temporary TED Talk over.
Yes, I'm gonna have to think about that. I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch for me. I will push back on that.
All right.
I mean,
I'm gonna push back on your pushback immediately, because connecting sex and violence is a Yoko Taro-ism that is present in every single one of his games, because he likes critiquing that the default mode of video game action is violence by making the violence seem bad to do, even though you don't have a choice to do it. But in the original NieR, in NieR Replicant, the protagonist's relationship with the character Kaine is one that culminates in a couple scenes of Kaine being violent to the protagonist, slapping him, kicking him in the face and beating him up when he starts having self-doubts, at which point, there is a moment in which Kaine attempts to, or starts to, go in for a kiss with the protagonist, but, chooses not to, and instead hits him again, and lets him, re-motivate himself to do the violent thing. And so it's like, it's being shown that violence is limiting their ability to express this romantic love for each other that has been developing. And then, spoilers, in one of the endings of NieR, when you are saving Kaine from a bad thing that happens by killing her, the protagonist does in fact go in for the kiss. And as an audience, you are meant, I won't say you will feel, but you are meant to feel that this romantic connection, this love that they could have had together, is ultimately being lost, being prevented from happening, because violence, the violent nature of the world and the power that they have gained and the necessity of wielding that violence is preventing them from achieving the thing that is significantly of more value, which is love and sex.
Well, I mean, love and sex are two different things. So
they're
linked.
related.
They're linked.
There is both romantic love and sexual love being expressed like together. He doesn't shy away from narratives of love, sex, or violence, and he constantly intermingles the three in all of his stories to make you see, wow, the violence part of this is really getting in the way of the love parts, the other two parts of this triangle that are kind of good.
I think there's a lot to pick apart there. I think they need to be picked apart because you're kind of talking about a lot of things like the nature of life, right? Like what the machines are made of, what the androids are made of, which it makes it clear that, spoilers, they're made of the same thing. So there's the nature of life, then there is, in terms of biology, then there is value in life, which you mentioned, then there's love, and then there's sex. And you sort of, you've linked all of them together in a way that kind of, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure I'm convinced that they're all like, as intricately connected as you put them. I mean, value, the thing that gives life value is not just its biological basis. It's many things.
But I would say to try to divorce sex entirely from love. Love can happen, romantic love can happen between asexual people, and sex can happen between aromantic people. But in terms of the fact that love and sexuality have some degree of connectedness in the human experience, I think can't be wholly separated as love and sex are just two separate things.
I agree with you there.
They need to, to some degree, they share a similar space.
I agree. I guess my problem is with the fact that sexuality is represented as a chick and a bear with a bare butt out. Maybe maybe you're going to say that he's deliberately playing on the trope to subvert it or something like this.
You're going to hate this. I'm not going to say he's deliberately playing on the trope to subvert it. I'm saying he is deliberately playing into the trope because he likes looking at big butts. However,
and he cannot lie.
He doesn't. We can't make that joke every time.
Yes, we can.
Well, I'm going to try to not laugh at it the next time. Thank you. But even though he commits male gaze, and he's not denying that he's committing male gaze, he is expressed outside of the game, yes, I am doing that because I like it. I like the things I look at. There is a little bit of reciprocity. I'm not going to call it equal between with 9S, but also one of the only philosophers that is present in the game which Yoko Taro doesn't critique but only expresses the ideas of is Simone de Beauvoir, who is the first machine boss in the amusement park, which, if I remember correctly, the little bits of getting more of Simone backstory with the hacking was a small part of the game that you liked.
Yes, just in a sense that it was a nice little snippet of story. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to take that small win. Little victories. Little victories. But so the non-equal reciprocity with the exposed butt and thighs of 9S is of 2B, is that 9S, you can do the same. You can expose his thighs, you can blow off his pants with a self-destruct, and he'll stay that way. And, admittedly, I would say that 9S's, body type is like not as textbook or stereotypical sexually arousing. It's not in your face, but
no, it's not at all.
The male, there are people who have a preference for small skinny boys as a thing, and that is a sexuality I'm willing to respect, and so I don't think it's equal, but it's present. However, when it comes to Pascal's village, which is the location you go to after you defeat the boss Simone, that is the only location in the game in which machine life forms are taking on and expressing gender. They are moms and dads, big brothers and little sisters, and then there is Jean-Paul, the machine life form, who has 3 feminine, presenting suitors throughout the map that are trying to gain his attention through taking on the socialized expectations of femininity. Dresses and long curly hair and bows and all the stuff that takes a Pac-Man and turns it into a Mrs. Pac-Man. The unnecessary engendering of female as a type distinct from the norm or the average of male. And while I did a whole video on it, I believe there is that section, I'm not going to rehash the whole video, but that section is there to highlight that, the male gaze, the gendering of women into a, specific social burden is present and true, because the male character of Jean-Paul during this side quest sequence sort of ignores all of their attempts and presents their attempts at seeking romantic suitorship on this male-female socialized dynamic fruitless, meaningless. And there is another side quest in that village in which you are rescuing a little sister robot who is the big robot, and the older sister robot is the small robot. Just, a little bit of parallelism that tries to show you that the labels don't have that much meaning, is that the little sister robot then starts questioning 9S about sex and how babies are made, and that jokey, oh, I'm an adult, I don't know how to answer this question to this child who's asking a question that they are too young for, kind of funny dynamic. And so it's that whole village, after you engage with Simone and find out that she has committed all of these atrocities in order to fulfill this burden of socially determined womanhood, that they are also engaging in engendering themselves unnecessarily, because as machines they don't have sexes, that they are committing that same falsity that is present in society. And this is all Simone de Beauvoir's explanation of, how society engenders norms upon women that limit their freedom and their ability to express themselves, dismisses their expressions as, valueless or lesser for being woman, in a completely erroneous way, in an unnecessary way. The Simone de Beauvoir's big quote of feminism that gets spread around is, one is not born a woman but becomes one. That femininity and masculinity are social norms imposed upon us, not true aspects of ourselves, that we define for ourselves what, how we express anything, sexuality included.
Yeah, I wish I could see a critique of gender and sexuality in the game, because I did notice that the machines were gendering themselves when they didn't need to be. I didn't know what to make of that, but to go back to 2B, and A2, who are the most sexualized characters in the game.
Yes.
So I have a few thoughts on that. First of all, to go back to what you said about when you try and look up 2B's skirt and she hand waves you away, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't impressed by that. I think a real subversion of the sexualization of female characters would be to not give you that choice to begin with, and it struck me as a bit of a, let's look up her skirt. Oh, but she's going to, slap our hand away in a sort of playful kind of way and say, oh, but you can still do it.
Well,
and you can still get your
her actual
off.
Response. Her actual response is one of anger. And she turns to the camera.
Yes, I know, but
and takes her fighting
But
stance.
it is such an inconsequential moment, and you really can get any upskirt shot you want on ladders and stuff. So really,
that's a part that I'm going to agree with.
So for me, it was a token gesture of a sort of, tee-hee.
Right.
I know what your fans. I know what you fans are like, and I know what you want, and we'll give it to you, but we'll kind of put this like playful little hand wavy moment in. Anyway, I wasn't impressed by that. And to your point about the fact that you can blow 9S's clothes off as well. It's not framed the same way, and 9S.
It's not.
It's not sexual, and 9S's body isn't presented in a sexual way, and so they're really nothing alike. The fact that this is similar to the argument that people make when they say that, if we make if we put a topless man in a movie, then that's exactly the same as if we put a woman in a bikini, and it's not the same at all, because it carries very different cultural. It has a very different meanings. So yeah, 2B and 2B and A2 are shamelessly sexualized. 9S is not, and I don't see any reason for that divide, aside from just shamelessly playing to tropes. And if it really was a criticism, like a comment on sexuality, in general, like human sexuality, as you said before, there'd be no reason for this divide. There'd be, you could have two unsexualized women and one super sexualized half-naked man. That would convey that theme just as well. So the fact that he went with the cheap, easy half-naked women and kind of normally dressed little boy that isn't sexualized at all, and it would be weird because he's like very boyish,
he's thin and short.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we see him as a boy, so clearly he's not
and he's kind of rebellious, so people could read that as childish.
Yeah, so he's not seen in that way at all, and so I still don't see a good reason for framing the characters in that way.
Here's my pushback on that, because by and large, while I see that the attempt was made, I also think that it was haphazard in that, and even in my video on how Simone de Beauvoir's philosophy was expressed, I said explicitly that it commits all of the problems it critiques.
That's right. And you know, summary and description isn't analysis. You know, simply showing an upskirt, even if you have the character wave away the camera, that's not subversion, and that's not real analysis. Just showing something isn't really isn't the same as critiquing it. So, yeah, I don't buy it as a critique.
The points that I'm going to push back on is, I do believe that 9S as a character is sexualized. I just don't think that sexualization is voyeuristic the way it is with 2B and A2. And the fact that it is voyeuristic with those two characters is, like, obviously there and a fair critique, and I'm never going to disagree with you on that. But I would say, to a comment you said earlier on, which is that something that would be more of a version would be to just not have the ability to look up her skirt. I would say the point that I actually want to agree with is that I would have liked there to be a real consequence for having done so. Because
or something like that, a real consequence. Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Right. While that, because I think the only way to, like, say, hey, you need to think about the agency and the bodily autonomy of this character who is being sexualized via male gaze, to actually engage with the concept of male gaze and then subvert it to expose Simone de Beauvoir's philosophy, is that in order to have actually done that better, you know, or to do it at all, you need to have male gaze in the first place in order to expose male gaze. And then when her agency is brought into the scenario by removing the agency of the player and giving it entirely to the character, there should have been a consequence. And I admit that it was fairly haphazard and poorly done because it is committing the faux pas that the philosophy critiques. But I also recognize that the Simone de Beauvoir's philosophy and influence is present. And so it's a weird that they are simultaneously there. And I think
it is weird.
Even though presentation, even though just stating the point is not the same thing as analysis and critique of social norms in our own society, I think for a lot of people, they never even hear or see that idea presented in the first place, especially in spaces where the male gaze is, you know, so there's a word I'm looking for, served, that it is, the male gaze is part of what a piece is using to attract players. Players would be attracted to play the game because of that, and then the presentation of a feminist philosophy, which they would probably never see in another game that, you know, so blatantly uses male gaze, is then put forward and presented in front of the player. It's not a full analysis or critique, as you've said. I agree with you on that point, but it is also presenting people who would never have thought of it with those ideas because they came to the game for something else.
Yeah, I'm not...
For the opposite of what those ideas are teaching.
Yeah, I'm not sure how strongly those ideas are there. I mean, considering that it panders to the male gaze, I don't think that we can say it's a game that's full of feminist ideas or that does any justice to feminist ideas. No, I mean, it would be good. It would be good if the game was subverting... you know, expectations. Right. And it's nice to see games that try and pull a bait and switch to subvert expectations. But, you know, I also don't have that standard for stories. I settle for stories in which the women are simply presented as fully human and just like everyone else and wear clothes just like everyone else. That's fine too. It could have just done that. there is nothing about Japanese culture or anime or games that prevents anyone from doing that. And so for me, it's not excusable.
Japanese culture is a little bit more pro-sex than American, European descended cultures.
Oh no!
Again,
I disagree
I don't
with
think
that.
I don't think it's.
Well, they're very sexually repressed.
I mean, I think we've had.
It's a very repressed culture. I mean, the sexual drive comes out in extreme ways in anime and games and such.
I find it sexually liberated in some ways more than our culture, but also repressed in different ways.
That's another conversation for another day.
It is. I just think that their form of sexual repression doesn't take on the same form that we have from a puritanical heritage. I'm talking about the Americas.
Body dissatisfaction is so high among Japanese women. I've never seen people so.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a ton of Japanese friends, and I've never seen people so dissatisfied with their bodies.
It's fairly
as
high
my Japanese
in Korea
friends.
and China as well.
There's something really off going on in Japan in terms of expression of sexuality and women's bodies. But that's another conversation, as I say. But yeah.
Point is, sexism is still real. The presence of a feminist philosophy is in NieR, but it's haphazardly done, and I don't blame you at all for not liking how it was poorly handled or believing it was poorly handled, because in a lot of ways, it definitely was.
Agreed.
And I got a fair bit of hate for saying that there is feminism in NieR Automata when I released my video, and I think at least I did my part at forcing the part of the narrative that people may have missed that was trying to be feminist into people's faces.
You can only do what you can.
You try your best.
What else do we have? I think we've
I was able to.
Go ahead. I think we've gotten through a lot.
I'm looking at some of my points here, and I'm realizing I don't care about them very much. It not doing the same thing as Ava. I don't really care about that. I like Ava. It's an extremely emotionally affecting show.
I'm rewatching it right now. It's still so good.
I think it affected me in exactly the opposite way that I get affected by NieR, and that's why I can't watch it, because I like enjoying my life. But
very fair. Very fair.
I had a thing about the critique of it not being a true open world, the invisible walls and things like that. That made it sort of immersion breaking. I was going to disagree with that, but then I remembered, oh yeah, I felt that same way. There were a lot of doorways I tried to run through that it didn't let me. And I was like, you should have let me. But at the same time, I get that you don't actually have a AAA budget. It just kind of blew up that way.
Yeah. No,
I mean, it wasn't
a real AAA
It wasn't
game.
An indie budget.
Yeah.
But
they had money.
I mean, you want to know a fun fact? The size of the map in the original NieR and the size of the map in NieR Automata is actually just a carbon copy of the relative size of the map of the Ocarina of Time.
Oh yes, he did mention that in one of his talks.
They just said, it's about this size, make it that big. I don't know why it's that big, but do it.
Because Ocarina of Time is the perfect game, and we should just use that as the model for games.
I'm not going to disagree with that, because we're not trying to get more hate in this video. We're trying to decrease it. I wrote, do genre shifts have to be innovative? I think I don't care about that. I like how the camera shifts, and I'm totally cool with other people not liking it.
And I'm totally cool with people liking it. I mean, there's a lot of things that are
it's fine.
Neat, and then some things that I was like meh about, but other people were like, yeah, this is neat, I love this, and that's totally like subjective. People are allowed to feel like whatever they like is, well, people are allowed to like neat things. Yeah.
I say they're not. People aren't allowed to like things. They're only allowed to like the things I say
Spicy
are good.
Opinions in this interview.
The next thing I wrote was, combat is too simple with its demands. I think I was going to go into a thing about
NieR's ability to teach game literacy, and as a hack and slash, it's not really trying to do that. Like, it's because it's platinum, it's somewhere between a like one note hack and slash and Devil May Cry Bayonetta, like real combo, like action games that demand that you get good, whereas NieR doesn't really demand that you do, even though you can.
Yeah, and again, if you like that sort of combat
care.
style, I won't disagree. I mean, that's also kind of subjective.
I think I don't care about that either. I mean, like, because I didn't get into becoming a style beast the way other people did, and when I was trying to defeat the true final DLC ultra bosses, like, I was like, I don't want to do cool combo. I want to do the mathematically most effective move, which turns out to be light attack, heavy attack with light sword, heavy sword. And so it's simple. I think it's fine that it's simple. I think I understand why it became boring for you. I wrote easy mode shouldn't exist. I don't think that was actually your point.
No, I loved easy mode. Hell, I would not have finished the game without it. But it's fun. It's so funny that even the NieR Automata fan base is not really willing to defend the combat. Like, that's the one thing that I find people saying all over the place. Is like, yeah, the combat isn't that good. Just throw it on easy mode and cruise through it. And so I was like, okay, I will do this thing that is actually approved by the Automata fan community. You can't tell me off for it.
I did most of my playthrough being suboptimal because I wanted to just do the thing that I thought looked the coolest. And I had the fists as my main weapon and the spear as my heavy weapon, which turns out that's the least optimal way to play. But
whoops.
It was still fun. I guess I found challenge because I was playing it in the worst way possible.
Self-challenge. You can do that.
That's what the gamers do.
Make things hard for yourself. Make life difficult.
The next thing I said was supplemental materials. I wrote a thing. I think we already talked about that, so I don't care about that anymore. Nihilism and violence. It talked about the meta text of the game industry, and I don't think there's much more to try to defend on that point. Okay. This might be the capstone to our interview, because even though you didn't like the game, one sentence, this is me reading a lot into one sentence of your video, was at the end, you said that playing the game felt like you were constantly grasping at a mirage of meaning that everyone else said was there, but you didn't get it. I remember that line from your video so distinctly because my response was, that's the game. Grasping at a mirage of meaning and then getting it with that final choice is the game.
Oh, yeah, I've come across that, right?
I was like, and I was like, when you said that, I was just like, you totally get it. You just didn't like it. But you get it. You understand. You just didn't like how it got there. And I'm like, but you get it, and that's the good thing.
Cool. I'm happy with that. I got it. I just didn't like it. I'm happy to.
And that's probably
what. And I do.
That's what drives me the most.
I do know that people will say that, like, oh, the final sequence and the E ending, which is just like a 1 minute cutscene. Just makes it turns that whole nihilistic 30-hour story into a hopeful, positive story. And if people,
I've definitely said the same.
If you interpret
and I've run
it
into
that
a
way,
lot of people who didn't get there.
So if that is the emotion that you are left with, I can't argue with that. It's perfectly valid. For me, it. I saw that it did that at the end. It just could not save the game for me.
It didn't hit you the same way, and like. And I've talked to a lot of NieR fans who, even getting to that ending, were not satisfied and kind of felt left in the nihilistic, self-hatred of the side of existential philosophy. And like, you see a lot of these people come to NieR communities to talk about that because they're like, the game didn't quite get me there. I need to connect with people and be a part of something greater than myself, because that choice in the game didn't deliver on the social feeling. So I'm going to go do the social feeling by talking to people. And so it's like, I've known a lot of people who didn't get that catharsis at the end. And so it's like, that's the thing that makes me just the most in my feelings about your video than anything else. Just that you totally get it and you just didn't like it. And it's like, but I can't be mad that you didn't understand, because you get it.
Well, I'm not sure I got all of it. I think that was part of the problem, because I'm not a Yoko Taro expert. I didn't read all the layers of subtext and metatext.
Right. And it's like the overtext, the main obvious story, the point of it, you totally understood and like were able to express accurately, even in your takedown video. And it's just like, it would be so much easier if I could say you don't get it and dismiss you. but you do get it, and that's not fair.
You might be giving me too much credit there.
Maybe I'm reading too much into your subtext.
You've definitely explained some things to me that I didn't get. And well, I've learned some stuff from this interview. I didn't get it all. There were some things to get that I didn't get. And yeah, I'm not sure what to say about my... I guess some people... maybe it comes down to the fact that a lot of people just liked that feeling of grasping at a mirage. It landed somehow for them. It didn't land for me, but that's just kind of subjective experience for you.
Yeah. And really all I wanted to... Well, the two things I wanted to accomplish was to, one, deflect any of the haters, because you are an intelligent and, don't deny my compliments, because people tend to deny my compliments when I give them. You're a very intelligent, thinker. You have a PhD. We've mentioned this before.
Technically, I do.
The reason people with PhDs mention their PhDs is because it takes a hell of a lot of work to get there, and you deserve to talk about it all the time. But the...
4 years.
It's just like... Even though I knew that the takedown video was coming, I wanted... My primary goal was that to make sure that people who would respond with saltiness the way I did would have somewhere to go and see that you are a reasonable and intelligent person whose analyses of games and media should be respected, because you can learn a lot from them, because I do. And my primary goal was deflect the haters. My secondary goal, which seemed like the primary goal, was to just expose that there is meaning here and attempts at, nuance and achievements of nuance in different parts of the game than you were focusing. And while it's entirely respectable that it didn't hit you, just to expose that it is present in the game. And it'll hit people different, but at the very least, it's there to some degree. However successfully it achieved those goals is a matter of interpretation, but at least it is present.
I think you've thoroughly achieved that goal, and you've convinced me that there were
Awesome.
things there that I didn't see. So, but there's a lot left for people to make up their minds about, in terms of, well, the way Yoko Taro chose to tell the story.
Yeah. I mean, there were other things in there that I wanted to bring up that didn't feel super relevant to my point. Like, the operator has 2B's operator has, like, a very short, tragic lesbian romance that doesn't work out, that isn't sexualized because she's just a voice on a phone and in emails. And I don't think that saves it from the other things it did, but it's at least one non-sexualized romantic story in the game. I'm just adding in things. I don't need to add
You
in
can
any
talk
more
about
things.
things that you thought were cool. You are allowed to do that.
I mean, it was cool. I also liked the relationship between NieR and his operator, because his operator, 60? What? I forget her name. It's hard to remember names when all they are is one number and one letter. But, she was very stern and, like, tough, even more so than 2B, even more stoic than 2B. And NieR's dialogue with her was like, why don't you just lighten up, take it less seriously, let's have some fun. And then when she did lighten up and tried to engage with NieR emotionally, sort of calling out the childishness, this sort of the boyishness of NieR, she started talking to him very motherly to sort of elicit a better cooperation. And NieR's response to this was, that's kind of gross. Can you just go back to being who you were? Can you just be your stern stoic self instead? Because I'm really creeped out by you trying to do the thing I wanted you to do.
Oh yeah, I vaguely remember.
Just be yourself. It was like, wow, NieR, you got exactly what you wanted, and you hate it because you actually just liked who your operator was anyway. I thought that was cute.
I mean, there are things that I thought were neat as well, that I talk about in the video. I like the corpse poetry.
Corpse poetry. I actually didn't engage with that because I was mostly offline for most of my playthrough, because I didn't have internet. And I'm going to share with you the biggest secret and the biggest shame of my NieR fandom. I was not connected to the internet when I played the final sequence.
Oh shit!
And so, the names that were coming in to help me were Kaine, Emil, Devila, Popola, Yona. All the names from Replicant. And NieR was the first name that came in. I think. Maybe it was Kaine. But the people who had their existences erased from the previous game were the ones coming to help me. And so, because I already had a deep emotional experience with the first, with NieR Replicant and Gestalt, even though I wasn't connected to other people who had done the same, I still had the feeling, because of my affect for characters which are emotionally real to me.
I wonder how much of this
of
this conversation is just
my emotions justifying themselves.
Person with a rich history of playing Yoko Taro's games understands the game, and person who only played this game hated it because they didn't have any of the tools to understand what they needed to.
Every game is an entry point, and every perspective is fair.
And in which, I mean, I guess neither of our perspectives or experiences were right or wrong.
Oh, mine was.
Huh? Oh,
I said mine. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose then my some of my criticisms of NieR Automata have changed even through this interview. Yeah.
Right. And, don't change them too much, because for, I would say, a good half of them I entirely agree with. So, even though it's my favorite thing ever, I still dislike
it's kind
parts
of
it.
my general feeling about it has gone from none of it has any meaning to some of it has some meanings, but they're needlessly buried, and also the language that you need to understand those meanings is not there for newcomers. And apparently, well, if you believe Yoko Taro that it's a game that was meant to be accessible for newcomers, I guess my feeling is it didn't succeed on that level. But it succeeded on some of the other levels that I didn't think it did previously. I've shifted.
Hey, that means I can pull my cord and my mission accomplished banner with my 12 balloons will fall down behind me. I have these 2 child-sized robots with the little confetti poppers. They're trying to pull the strings. They're not doing it successfully. I think they broke them. But, hey,
Yoo-hoo!
I did it.
You did it!
This is I would say I won this debate because I got you to slightly nudge your opinion towards a more favorable end by a few inches.
Yes, and I got you to concede some of my points, so I gotcha. I don't know what you say.
Oh, well, that doesn't count because reasons. So only I win. All right.
This was a fruitful conversation.
Pixel.
And I had a good time.
It was, and me too. And thank you so much for agreeing to this so last minute. It was just...
I had to cancel all my plans of sitting on my couch and drinking wine.
Oh, no! As someone who was raised Catholic, the fact that I have prevented you from drinking wine is blasphemous. So I need to go say some Hail Marys. Maybe I need to do some
think about what you've
flagellation done with a cat of nine tails. Maybe I have to play Darkest Dungeon again. Something to punish myself. All right.
Well, you go and do that then.
Thank you. I'll try. Thank you so much, Pixel. I have never had the opportunity to sit down and talk with someone who actively dislikes the thing I like with the NieR games, and it was extraordinarily valuable to me. Hopefully to all the listeners. Yeah, listeners, if it was valuable to you, hit the like button and comment with that German thing I told you before to comment with.
Yeah,
and,
coherent comments will be deleted. Only vague,
coherent comments
things will
be deleted.
Nonsense
if you
only.
do not repeat, make sure you repeat the last 2 words of your comment 47 times so that I can tell that you're having an emotional breakdown. That's the only way to communicate.
That's all we ask of you. An emotional breakdown.
Yeah,
That's all
it's
we
not
want.
much. It's not much.
Is it too much? No.
All right.
Clearly not.
It's not too much. It's not enough. All right.
Okay.
Thank you again,
it was
Pixel. I'm going to say goodbye.
Goodbye, and good night, or good day in your case.
Good morning and good night, wherever you may be.
Bye.
And that'll be our fade out.
Woo.